"I'll break your wrist if you say another word," the vice president snarled, ripping the microphone from her hand and twisting her wrist before a shocked crowd of employees. As a black CEO masquerading as an intern, she faced relentless racism, scorn, and sabotage. Her brilliance ignored, her voice silenced, her every move met with derision. Yet behind her stoic mask, a plan for justice simmered. What happens when the woman they mocked reveals her true power? Can she dismantle a toxic empire? Stay tuned for a riveting story of revenge and triumph. If you're gripped already, smash that subscribe button for our latest tales, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Will her enemies regret underestimating her? Keep listening to uncover the jaw-dropping truth. You won't believe how this unfolds. The Atlanta skyline shimmered under the 2015 summer sun, a mosaic of glass and steel that promised opportunity. Melissa Carter, barely 22, stood in the Athenics Corporation's sleek boardroom, her heart pounding like a drum. Her braids were pulled back tightly, her navy blazer a touch too stiff, but her eyes burned with conviction. As a strategic consultant, she'd spent months crafting a revolutionary AI initiative, a system to streamline global supply chains, potentially saving billions. Today, she was pitching it to Athenics' executive team, her voice steady despite the weight of a dozen gazes. Melissa's vision wasn't just a project, it was a lifeline for her fledgling startup, a dream she'd poured every waking hour into. Marcus Vaughn, vice president of operations, leaned back in his leather chair, his smirk sharp as a blade. A man in his late 40s, with slicked back hair and a tailored suit that screamed old money, he radiated authority. To him, Melissa was an anomaly, a young black woman daring to occupy his space. As she outlined predictive algorithms and real-time analytics, his fingers drummed the mahogany table, each tap a silent dismissal. When she finished, the room held its breath. Then Marcus chuckled, a low, venomous sound. "Ambitious," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But we don't gamble on untested theories from unproven sources." The pause before unproven was deliberate, a jab at her youth, her race, her audacity. Melissa's jaw tightened, but she held her ground. "The data's solid, Mr. Vaughn. I've run simulations." "Simulations?" He cut in, leaning forward. "This isn't a college project, sweetheart. Athenics plays in the big leagues." Snickers rippled from his allies, men who mirrored his arrogance. The rejection stung, but Melissa pressed on, citing case studies and ROI projections. Marcus waved her off. "We'll pass. Stick to consulting, Miss Carter. Leave the innovation to us." That night in her cramped apartment, Melissa stared at her laptop, the Athenics rejection letter glowing on the screen. Her startup, Nexus AI, was bleeding cash. The pitch was supposed to secure a contract, a lifeline. Instead, Marcus's words echoed, unproven, untested, unfit. She poured herself a glass of cheap wine, her hands trembling. But worse was coming. Over the next weeks, whispers reached her. Marcus had blackballed Nexus AI. Key clients pulled out, citing concerns about reliability. A major Athenics contract, nearly signed, vanished without explanation. By autumn, Nexus AI collapsed. Melissa's savings dwindled, her team scattered, her dreams reduced to a stack of unpaid bills. In the wreckage, she learned the truth. Marcus hadn't just rejected her I-dream, he'd orchestrated her ruin, ensuring no black woman would outshine him. Alone in her darkened apartment, Melissa knelt beside a box of Nexus AI documents, her breath hitching. The weight of failure pressed down, years of sacrifice, late nights, and defiance against a world that doubted her. She traced the company logo, a spark igniting in her chest. "This isn't the end," she whispered. "I'll take it all back." Her vow was a blade, honed by betrayal. She would rebuild not for glory, but for justice. 10 years later, Atlanta's skyline gleamed anew, its towers sharper against the 2025 dusk. Melissa Carter, now 32, stood in a penthouse office, her silhouette framed by floor-to-ceiling windows. Gone was the nervous consultant. In her place was a woman forged in fire. Her braids were sleek, her tailored blazer a quiet declaration of power. She was no longer the dreamer Marcus had crushed. She was the architect of his undoing. Over a decade, Melissa had clawed her way up. Night shifts at tech firms, freelance coding gigs, and relentless self-education in finance and corporate strategy. She'd built a network of silent allies, investors, lawyers, insiders, who saw her brilliance. Through anonymous entities, she'd acquired Athenics piece by piece until she held the reins as its hidden CEO. The board knew her only as MC, a reclusive genius communicating through encrypted calls. To the world, Melissa Carter was a ghost. To Marcus Vaughn, she was nobody. Athenics had grown into a tech titan, but its core was rotting. Marcus, now vice president of operations, ruled with an iron fist, his clique of executives fostering a culture of racism, harassment, and greed. Reports reached Melissa. Black employees sidelined, women silenced, whistleblowers fired. Marcus's empire thrived on fear, his arrogance unchecked. He'd forgotten the young consultant he'd destroyed, but Melissa hadn't forgotten him. She turned from the window, her desk a command center of monitors and dossiers. A file labeled Vaughn lay open, detailing his misdeeds, embezzled funds, discriminatory emails, covert deals with competitors. Her team, loyal operatives who knew her true identity, had spent years gathering evidence. But evidence wasn't enough. Melissa needed to see the rot herself to walk among the wolves before she struck. Her plan was audacious: infiltrate Athenics as an intern, a nobody named Maya Collins. The disguise would be perfect: modest clothes, a fabricated resume, a demeanor that invited dismissal. She'd observe Marcus's world up close, documenting every sin. The thought of facing him again, unrecognized, sent a thrill through her. He'd mocked her as unproven. Soon he'd learn how wrong he was. Melissa opened a drawer, pulling out a worn Nexus AI business card, its edges frayed. It was a relic of her past, a reminder of the girl who dared to dream. She tucked it into her pocket, a talisman. Tomorrow, she'd step into Athenics' glass tower, not as a conqueror, but as prey, at least in their eyes. Marcus and his cronies would see a black woman, an intern, an easy target. They'd never suspect the storm she carried. As she powered down her monitors, Melissa's gaze lingered on a photo of her younger self, smiling at a tech conference, eyes full of hope. That girl had been broken, but she'd rebuilt herself stronger. Marcus had taken her company, her pride, her future. Now Melissa would take everything from him, not just his power, but his legacy. She switched off the light, the city's glow casting shadows across the room. Her vow from a decade ago echoed in the silence. This isn't over. Tomorrow, the first move in her chess game would begin. Marcus Vaughn would never see her coming. The glass doors of Athenics' Atlanta headquarters gleamed like a fortress under the 2025 morning sun, their reflective sheen masking the venom within. Melissa Carter, now Maya Collins, adjusted her thrift store blazer and clutched a worn notebook, her heart a steady metronome despite the role she played. At 32, she was no stranger to facades, but this one was her boldest yet. A 30-something intern, invisible in a world that prized power. Her glasses, unnecessary but convincing, slid down her nose as she stepped into the lobby, the air thick with the hum of ambition and coffee. To the security guard, she was just another face swiping a temporary badge. To Melissa, this was enemy territory, and she was a spy in plain sight. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt like a descent into a predator's lair. Melissa's reflection in the polished walls showed a woman crafted for anonymity. Loose slacks, scuffed flats, a hesitant smile. Her braids were tucked into a low bun, unassuming. But beneath the disguise, her mind churned, cataloging every detail. The receptionist's curt nod, the whispered jibes from passing suits, the way eyes lingered on her skin before dismissing her. Athenics' culture hadn't changed since Marcus Vaughn crushed her dreams a decade ago. It had festered. As Maya Collins, Melissa would peel back its layers, exposing the rot to the light. Her first day as an intern began in a fluorescent-lit conference room, where a dozen new hires sat under the gaze of a mid-level manager named Karen. Melissa took a seat at the back, her notebook open, pen poised. Karen's orientation speech was a rehearsed hymn to Athenics' excellence, but her eyes skipped over Melissa, lingering on the white interns with practiced warmth. The slight wasn't new, but it stung all the same. Melissa scribbled, "Notes not on the speech, but on the room's dynamics. Who deferred to whom? Who smirked at her presence?" Every glance was data, every snub a piece of her case. The morning dragged through training modules, but Melissa's focus was elsewhere. She'd memorized Athenics' org chart, knew Marcus Vaughn's schedule, 9 a.m. strategy meeting, 11 a.m. client call. As an intern, she'd be invisible to him. A ghost fetching coffee while his empire crumbled. Her real work began in the margins, overhearing hushed talks in break rooms, noting who avoided eye contact with non-white staff. By noon, she'd already caught a manager muttering about diversity quotas ruining the team. Melissa's pen moved faster, her mask of naivety unbroken. In the cafeteria, she met Jamal, a 24-year-old coder with a quick smile and wary eyes. He slid into the seat across from her, his tray clattering. "You're the new intern, right, Maya?" His voice was friendly but guarded, a survivor's tone. Melissa nodded, offering a shy grin. "Yeah, just trying to keep up." Jamal glanced around, lowering his voice. "Word of advice, watch your back. This place, it's not what it seems." His words were a thread, and Melissa tugged gently, asking about the team, the culture. Jamal hesitated, then admitted, "Some folks here don't like people who look like us. They'll smile, but it's a trap." Melissa's pulse quickened. This was her first ally, even if he didn't know it yet. The afternoon brought her first task, sorting files in a bullpen near Marcus's office. The glass walls gave her a clear view of his domain. Plush carpet, mahogany desk, a kingdom of ego. Marcus strode in at 2 p.m., his suit pristine, his laugh booming as he clapped a colleague's shoulder. Melissa kept her head down, stacking papers, but her ears were sharp. His voice carried through the glass, bragging about a deal that put those upstarts in their place. Her fingers tightened around a folder. Upstarts. The word echoed from a decade ago when he'd called her startup a pipe dream. He hadn't changed, but she had. Her chance to observe up close came during a late afternoon team meeting. Assigned to take notes, Melissa sat at the edge of a conference table, her presence barely acknowledged. Marcus presided, his charisma a polished weapon. The agenda was a quarterly financial report, but Melissa's eyes were on the subtext. The way he ignored a black analyst's input, the way his allies, 4 senior directors, nodded like courtiers. When a junior manager, a Latina, suggested a cost-saving measure, Marcus interrupted her. "Let's stick to what works, Maria." The room laughed, but Melissa's pen scratched furiously, documenting the dismissal. Then it happened. Maria, undeterred, cited a discrepancy in the report. A $2 million overrun tied to a vendor contract. Marcus's smile froze. Melissa, unable to resist, glanced at the figures on her tablet. The error was glaring, a rookie mistake. Before she could stop herself, she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "She's right. The vendor's billing cycle doesn't match the ledger. It's off by 2 quarters. The room stilled. Marcus's gaze snapped to her, a predator scenting defiance. "And you are?" he asked, his tone a blade wrapped in silk. "Maya Collins, intern," Melissa replied, meeting his eyes for a fraction too long. His brow furrowed, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Did he sense something familiar? She dropped her gaze, playing the nervous newbie, but her heart raced. She'd tipped her hand, just enough to stir his suspicion. Marcus leaned back, his smirk returning. "Interns don't audit, Miss Collins. Stick to coffee runs." The room chuckled, but his eyes lingered, searching. Melissa felt the weight of recognition, faint but growing. He didn't know her, not yet, but the seed was planted. As the meeting ended, Melissa lingered, pretending to organize her notes. Marcus's voice drifted from a side conversation with a director. "That intern's got nerve. Keep an eye on her." The words were a warning, but to Melissa, they were a spark. She'd rattled him, and it felt like victory. Back at her desk, she opened a secure app on her phone, sending a coded message to her team. First contact. "He's watching." Her operatives, lawyers, hackers, insiders replied instantly, confirming new intel. Marcus's latest deal involved a shady vendor, a potential goldmine of evidence. That night, in a safe house across town, Melissa shed Maya's frumpy clothes, her posture shifting to the confident stride of a CEO. Her team gathered around a table, laptops glowing. A hacker, Lena, pulled up Marcus's email, a treasure trove of slurs and backroom deals. "He's sloppy," Lena said, grinning. "This one calls a black VP a token hire." Melissa's jaw clenched. She'd known Athenics was toxic, but the raw hatred in those words fueled her resolve. Another operative, a lawyer named David, handed her a dossier on Jamal. "He's clean, smart, could be useful." Melissa nodded, her mind already weaving him into her plan. As she drove home, Atlanta's lights blurred past, a city that had once broken her, now her battleground. Marcus's unease in that meeting was a crack in his armor, and Melissa would pry it open. She touched the old Nexus AI card in her pocket, its edges soft from years of handling. Tomorrow she'd return as Maya, the intern who'd dared to speak. Marcus might watch her now, but soon he'd see her for who she was, and by then it would be too late. The Athenics Tower loomed over Atlanta's dawn, its glass facade a cold mirror of ambition. Melissa Carter, cloaked as Maya Collins, stepped into the elevator, her intern badge dangling like a disguise. At 32, she was a master of deception, her frumpy cardigan and scuffed flats masking the CEO who held the company's reins. 3 weeks into her infiltration, the air crackled with tension. Marcus Vaughn, the vice president of operations, had marked her as a nuisance after her bold comment in the last meeting. His scrutiny was a blade at her throat. But Melissa thrived. On the edge, her every move a calculated dance to unravel his empire. The bullpen buzzed with morning chatter, but eyes darted away when Melissa passed. Her skin, her status as an older intern made her a target for whispers. She settled at her corner desk, her notebook a shield, jotting observations, a manager's sneer, a black coder's sidelined idea, the way Marcus's allies, 4 senior directors, strutted like untouchable kings. Her role as Maya demanded meekness, but her mind was a furnace burning with purpose. Marcus's suspicion had sharpened his cruelty, and Melissa was now his favorite prey. Her morning task was data entry, a mind-numbing slog meant to break her. Spirit. Marcus had assigned it himself, his smirk a silent dare. Stay in your lane. As she typed, Melissa overheard a director, Greg, berating a young analyst for a minor error. "If you can't handle this, maybe retail's more your speed," Greg snapped, his tone laced with racial venom. The analyst, a black woman, shrank in her chair. Melissa's fingers paused, her pen scratching a note. Greg Coleman, 9:17 a.m. Discriminatory conduct. Every slight was ammunition, and she was building an arsenal. By noon, Melissa's real work began. In a break room, she accidentally bumped into Jamal, the coder who'd warned her about Athenics' underbelly. His tray wobbled and she steadied it, flashing Maya's shy smile. "Sorry, I'm a klutz," she said, easing into conversation. Jamal's guard lowered as they talked, his frustration spilling out. "They promote the same type. White, male, connected. I pitched an app last month. They laughed it off." Melissa nodded, her empathy genuine but strategic. "That's rough. Ever think about pushing back?" Jamal's eyes flickered with doubt, but a seed was planted. She needed allies, and he was a spark waiting to catch. The afternoon brought a new test. Marcus summoned the intern pool to his office, a power play disguised as mentorship. Melissa filed in with the others, her pulse steady despite the lion's den. Marcus lounged behind his desk, his tie loosened, his gaze predatory. "You're the future," he drawled, "but only if you learn your place." His eyes locked on Melissa, lingering with malice. "Miss Collins, any wisdom from your vast experience?" The room tittered, the jab at her age and status clear. Melissa swallowed, playing the nervous intern. "Just here to learn, sir." His laugh was a blade. "Good, keep it that way." Back at her desk, Melissa's facade nearly cracked. Marcus's taunts were personal now, each one a reminder of the startup he'd destroyed a decade ago. She channeled the rage, funneling it into her mission. That evening, in a secure safe house, she met her team. Lena, the hacker, and David, the lawyer. Lena slid a USB drive across the table. "Got something big. Marcus and his crew are skimming millions through fake vendor contracts. Emails, invoices, the works." Melissa's eyes gleamed as she plugged in the drive, spreadsheets glowing on her laptop. The numbers told a story of greed. Shell companies, inflated fees, kickbacks funneled to offshore accounts. "This is gold," she murmured, her voice low with triumph. David leaned forward, his tone grave. "There's more. Marcus is pitching a data deal to a rival firm. Trade secrets for a stake. We've got partial recordings." Melissa's jaw tightened. Selling Athenics' core tech was treason, a betrayal even his allies might not stomach. She instructed Lena to plant a discreet recorder in Marcus's office, a tiny device hidden in a pen. "We need him confessing," Melissa said. "Every word." Lena nodded, her fingers already typing commands to mask their digital tracks. 2. Keep Marcus off balance, Melissa orchestrated a subtle misstep. During a team huddle the next day, she misfiled a report, ensuring it reached Marcus's desk with a typo. He pounced, storming into the bullpen, his face red. "Collins," he barked, tossing the papers at her feet. "If you can't handle basics, you're out." Colleagues averted their eyes, but Melissa's apology was a masterclass in humility. Her trembling hands a lie. The outburst played into her hands. Marcus's temper was a weakness and she'd exploit it. Her gamble paid off that night. Alone in the office, Melissa retrieved the recorder from Marcus's pen, its audio crisp. His voice, slurred from whiskey, filled her earbuds as he spoke to Greg on speakerphone. "The data deal's set. 10 million and we're golden. Just keep the board clueless." Greg's laugh was oily. "And that intern, she's trouble, too nosy." Marcus's reply was a growl. "I'll crush her. Nobody challenges me." Melissa's lips curved, a predator's smile. The recording was dynamite, but she needed more. Visuals, witnesses, a trap he couldn't escape. The week's end brought an invitation to Athenics' quarterly gala, a glitzy affair for executives and select staff. Marcus, in a rare gesture, extended it to interns, his motive clear. A stage to humiliate. Melissa RSVP'd as Maya, her plan taking shape. The gala would be a minefield, but also a gold mine. Drunk executives, loose tongues, and a chance to catch Marcus off guard. She texted her team. "Galas are shot, prep surveillance." Lena replied with a thumbs up, already hacking the venue's cameras. At the gala, Melissa blended into the crowd, her dress modest but elegant, her glasses swapped for contacts to avoid recognition. Crystal chandeliers cast a glow over Atlanta's elite, but the air reeked of hypocrisy. Marcus held court, his laughter booming as he toasted with his cronies. He spotted Melissa, his eyes narrowing. "Miss Collins," slumming it with the big dogs. His allies chuckled, but Melissa's smile was disarming. "Just grateful to be here, sir." Her deference was a mask, but his gaze lingered, a hunter sensing prey. As he turned away, Melissa slipped to a quiet corner, her phone buzzing with Lena's update. Cameras live. Got him on tape with a shady vendor. She glanced at Marcus, his hand on a client's shoulder, his arrogance a ticking bomb. The gala was his kingdom, but Melissa was rewriting the rules. She touched the Nexus AI card in her clutch, its weight grounding her. Marcus thought he'd won a decade ago, but tonight, She'd light the fuse that would burn his world down. The Athenics headquarters pulsed with the frenetic energy of a corporate coliseum, its glass walls reflecting Atlanta's overcast sky. In late 2025, Melissa Carter, veiled as Maya Collins, navigated the 15th floor bullpen, her intern badge a flimsy shield against the storm she was about to unleash. At 32, she was a phantom in plain sight, her dowdy sweater and practiced timidity, cloaking the CEO who held the company's fate. 4 weeks into her covert mission, Marcus Vaughn's vendetta against her had sharpened to a razor's edge, his every jab a test of her restraint. But today, at the company's live-streamed all-hands meeting, Melissa sensed the tipping point. The air crackled with possibility, her chance to turn his arrogance into his undoing. The auditorium was a sea of suits and forced smiles, the stage a platform for executive egos. Melissa sat in the back, her notebook open, her pen tracing, idle circles that belied her racing mind. The live stream feed, broadcast to thousands of Athenics employees worldwide, hummed on massive screens. Marcus, vice president of operations, strode on stage, his tailored suit gleaming under the lights, his grin a predator's mask. He launched into a speech about unprecedented growth, his voice booming with false sincerity. Melissa's eyes narrowed, catching the subtle glances he exchanged with his inner circle, 4 directors who propped up his reign of greed and prejudice. Her role as Maya was to blend in, but Marcus had other plans. Midway through, he paused, his gaze sweeping the crowd until it locked on her. "Let's hear from the future of Athenics," he said, his tone laced with mockery. "Miss Collins, our star intern, has a report to share. Come on up." The room stirred, heads turning. Melissa's stomach twisted, not from fear, but from the audacity of his trap. She hadn't been assigned a report. None of the interns had. This was a public execution designed to humiliate. She rose, smoothing her skirt, her steps measured as she climbed the stage. The weight of hundreds of eyes pressed against her, but Melissa's focus was singular. Marcus's smirk, a dare to crumble. He handed her a folder, its pages blank except for a hastily scrawled title, Q3 Projections. A prop, nothing more. "Go ahead, Maya," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Enlighten us." The microphone felt cold in her hand, the silence suffocating. She opened her mouth, grasping for words, when Marcus moved. In a swift, deliberate motion, he snatched the microphone, his fingers brushing hers with calculated force. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he twisted her arm, just enough to make her stumble. The folder slipped, papers scattering across the stage, like fallen leaves. Pain shot through Melissa's wrist, but she bit back a gasp, her eyes locking on his. "Know your place and stay there," Marcus hissed, loud enough for the front rows to hear. His allies chuckled, a cruel chorus, while the rest of the room froze in uneasy silence. The live stream captured it all. His sneer, her stagger, the papers at her feet. Melissa straightened, her face a mask of stunned deference, but inside, a fire roared. This was the moment, the spark to ignite her plan. As Marcus turned back to the crowd, dismissing her with a wave, she caught a flicker of movement in the audience. Jamal, the young coder she'd befriended, held his phone discreetly, his expression grim. He was recording. Melissa's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. The trap Marcus set had ensnared him instead. She retreated to her seat, her wrist throbbing, but her resolve ironclad. The meeting droned on, but Melissa's mind was elsewhere, replaying the assault, cataloging every witness. Marcus's stunt wasn't just personal. It was a violation of every HR policy Athenics claimed to uphold. More than that, it was evidence, a cornerstone for the case she'd been building. As the auditorium emptied, Jamal caught her eye, slipping her USB drive under the guise of handing back a pen. "You okay?" he whispered. "I got it all." Melissa nodded, her voice low. "Keep it safe. We'll talk later." That night, in her safe house, Melissa shed Maya's drab clothes, her posture shifting to the commanding grace of a CEO. The room buzzed with her team's urgency, Lena, the hacker, hunched over a laptop. David, the lawyer, flipping through legal briefs. Jamal's video played on a monitor, the footage crystal clear. Marcus's twist of her wrist, his venomous words, the crowd's shock. "This is dynamite," Lena said, her fingers flying to back up the file. "It's viral potential, but we hold it until you're ready." Melissa agreed, her eyes fixed on the screen. "It's not enough to shame him. We bury him." David. Spread out a dossier. Months of evidence now, a towering edifice. Emails in which Marcus mocked black employees as affirmative action mistakes. Bank records tie his clique to $5 million in siphoned funds through fake vendors. Audio of him plotting to sell proprietary AI code to a rival, his voice smug with greed. The video was the final piece, a public act of cruelty to galvanize her case. Melissa leaned forward, her voice steel. "Cross-reference every frame with HR complaints. I want the names of every employee he's targeted. We're not just taking him down, we're freeing them." Lena pulled up a new find, a hidden server where Marcus's team stored off-the-books deals. "They're sloppy," she said, grinning. "Passwords barely encrypted." The server revealed a network of kickbacks with Marcus funneling profits to his allies while burying whistleblower reports. Melissa's jaw clenched, thinking of the black analyst humiliated that week. The Latina manager silenced. This wasn't just corruption. It was a machine designed to crush anyone who didn't fit Marcus's mold. As the clock ticked past midnight, Melissa stood, pacing the room. The video had shifted her timeline. She couldn't wait for the gala. Now, Marcus's assault was a gift, a crack in his armor she'd pry open at the emergency board meeting she'd call tomorrow. She texted her operatives. "Prep the board. Full disclosure, 8 a.m. David nodded, already drafting the agenda. "This'll, hit like a freight train, you sure?" Melissa's eyes burned with certainty. "I've never been surer." She stepped to the mirror, peeling off Maya's glasses, her reflection a warrior shedding her disguise. The wrist he'd twisted ached, a reminder of his hubris. Marcus thought he'd broken her spirit, just as he'd crushed her startup a decade ago. But Melissa wasn't that girl anymore. She reached into her bag, pulling out the frayed Nexus AI card, its logo a beacon of her past. Tomorrow, she'd walk into Athenics not as an intern, but as the architect of Marcus's ruin. The safe house fell silent save for the hum of laptops. Melissa slipped into a tailored blazer, its sharp lines a promise of the power she'd unleash. The boardroom awaited, and with it, the moment she'd turn Marcus's world to ash. She whispered to the empty room, a vow as fierce as the one she'd made 10 years prior. "Your throne is mine now." The city outside slept, unaware of the storm about to break. The Athenics Tower stood sentinel over Atlanta's pre-dawn haze, its glass spires glinting with the promise of reckoning. Melissa Carter stepped from a nondescript sedan at 6:30 a.m., her tailored charcoal suit a stark departure from the frumpy guise of Maya Collins. At 32, she was no longer the intern who'd endured Marcus Vaughn's cruelty. She was the CEO, a shadow no more, ready to shatter his empire. The emergency board meeting loomed, a stage for her unveiling, and Melissa's pulse thrummed with the certainty of a predator closing in. Last night's video, Marcus twisting her wrist, his sneering "know your place," was the keystone of her meticulously built case, a spark to ignite his downfall. Inside, the lobby was a ghost town, its marble floors echoing her heels. Sharp cadence. Melissa bypassed the intern badge, swiping a secure keycard that granted access to the executive floor. In a basement security office, she met Lena, her hacker, who handed her a tablet loaded with their arsenal. The assault footage, damning emails, and audio of Marcus's illicit deals. "Board's assembling," Lena murmured. "Marcus thinks it's about a merger. He's clueless." Melissa's lips curved, a blade's edge in her smile. "Good. Let him walk in blind." At 7:45, she slipped into a private suite, transforming fully. Her braids, freed from Maya's tight bun, cascaded in sleek waves. Diamond studs replaced the intern's cheap earrings. The mirror reflected a warrior, her eyes alight with 10 years of bottled fury. She tucked the frayed Nexus AI card into her pocket, a talisman of the startup Marcus had crushed. Today, she'd reclaim that loss and more. Her phone buzzed. David, her lawyer, confirming the FBI's presence in a nearby conference room, ready to receive her evidence. Everything was aligned, a chessboard set for checkmate. The boardroom, a fortress of glass and steel, hummed with tension as Melissa entered at 80 sharp. 12 board members sat around the polished table, their faces a mix of curiosity and ease. Marcus lounged at the far end, his suit immaculate, his grin smug as he chatted with Greg, one of his 4 loyal directors. He didn't notice Melissa at first, mistaking her for a consultant until she took the head of the table. His eyes narrowed, confusion flickering. "Who's this?" he muttered to Greg, who shrugged. Melissa's voice cut through the murmur, clear and commanding. "Good morning, I'm Melissa Carter, sole owner of Athenics through my holding entities, and your CEO." The room froze. Marcus's jaw slackened, his coffee cup halting midair. Board members exchanged stunned glances, their whispers dying. She pressed a button and the screens behind her flared to life. The video from yesterday's meeting played, Marcus yanking the microphone, twisting her wrist, his venomous, "Know your place and stay there." Gasps rippled. A board member clutched her pearls. Marcus's face drained of color, his bravado crumbling. "This," Melissa said, her tone ice, "is your vice president of operations, but it's only the beginning." The screen shifted, displaying emails where Marcus derided black employees as quota fillers, unfit for leadership. Audio followed, his voice smug as he outlined a $10 million data sale to a rival firm. Bank records scrolled, revealing $5 million siphoned through fake vendors, his click signatures on every transaction. Melissa paced, her presence filling the room. For years, Marcus Vaughn and his allies, Greg Coleman, Paul Hensley, Richard Tate, and Stephen Bryce, have fostered racism, harassment, and corruption. They've silenced talent, stolen from Athenics, and betrayed its values. Marcus lurched to his feet, his voice a rasp. "This is absurd. She's Intern." Melissa's gaze pinned him, unyielding. "An intern you assaulted on a live stream, in front of thousands. An intern who owns this company." She nodded to Lena, who entered with security guards. "As of this moment, you and your 4 accomplices are terminated for cause." The guards flanked Marcus's clique, their faces ashen. Greg stammered, "You can't," but Melissa cut him off. "I already have." She turned to the board, her voice steady. "These files, every email, recording, and transaction are now with the FBI, who await downstairs. Athenics will cooperate fully with their investigation." A board member, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses, nodded grimly. "This is unprecedented, but the evidence is irrefutable." Melissa handed Lena a USB drive. "Deliver this to Agent Harper, now." Lena exited, her steps brisk as the boardroom's air grew heavier. Marcus's eyes darted, seeking an escape. "You set me up," he hissed, his voice cracking. "Who are you?" Melissa stepped closer, her presence a storm. "I'm the woman whose startup you destroyed 10 years ago. Nexus AI, remember it? You blackballed me, crushed my dreams, but I rebuilt, and now I own you." Recognition dawned in his eyes, horror replacing arrogance. He sank into his chair, trembling as his allies avoided his gaze. Security moved in, escorting the 5 men. Melissa stopped Marcus at the door, her voice low, cutting. "Power doesn't come from fear. It comes from respect, and you'll remember that for the rest of your life." He flinched, his face ghostly as guards led him away. The boardroom fell silent, the board members staring at Melissa with a mix of awe and fear. She smoothed her, Zoot reclaiming the table's head. "We have work to do. Athenics' culture is rotten. Starting today, we rebuild, transparently, equitably." The meeting stretched into strategy. New HR policies, anonymous reporting channels, and audits of every department Marcus's clique had touched. Melissa delegated tasks, her authority unquestioned. By noon, the board approved her plan unanimously, shaken by the evidence but galvanized by her vision. As they dispersed, a board member lingered, offering a handshake. "You've saved this company, Ms. Carter." Melissa's smile was tight. "I'm just beginning." Alone in the boardroom, she stood by the window, Atlanta sprawling below. The city had once been her crucible, forging her through loss. Now it was her canvas. Her phone buzzed. Lena, confirming the FBI had opened a case, with Marcus and his allies facing charges for fraud, racketeering, and assault. Social media was ablaze, the livestream clip leaking despite her orders. Employees were rallying, sharing stories of Marcus's abuses. Melissa's chest tightened, not with triumph, but with responsibility. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about the thousands she'd freed from his shadow. She pulled the Nexus AI card from her pocket, its faded logo a reminder of the girl she'd been. Marcus had thought her weak, a footnote in his story. Today, she'd rewritten the narrative, but the war wasn't over. Athenics needed her, and so did every employee who'd been silenced. Melissa slipped the card back, her reflection in the glass a portrait of resolve. The boardroom doors opened behind her, David ready to brief her on the next steps. She turned, her voice firm. "Let's get to work." Outside, Marcus stumbled into a waiting car, his suit wrinkled, his legacy. Shh. Melissa didn't watch. Her eyes were on the horizon, where a new Athenics would rise, one built on justice, not fear. The fire she'd lit would burn on, and she was its keeper. The Athenics Tower pierced Atlanta's skyline, its glass facade a defiant beacon against the bruised clouds of late 2025. Melissa Carter stood at the helm of her 40th floor office, her silhouette sharp in a midnight blue suit, no longer the veiled intern but the CEO who'd toppled an empire. At 32, she was a force unbound, her braids framing a face etched with resolve. The boardroom revelation, unmasking Marcus Vaughn and his corrupt clique, had sent shockwaves through the company, and now, 3 days later, the storm was raging. Melissa's gambit had ignited a firestorm, and she was its architect, steering Athenics through chaos toward redemption. The news broke like a tidal wave. By noon, headlines screamed of Marcus's termination, the FBI's investigation, and the viral clip of his assault on intern Maya Collins. Athenics' stock plummeted. Percent in hours, a bruise Melissa had anticipated. She'd spent the morning in crisis mode, meeting with PR to craft a response. A press release admitting past failures, pledging transparency, and outlining reforms. Her voice, steady on a conference call with investors, quelled panic. "Athenics is purging its poison," she declared, her words a lifeline. By dusk, the stock stabilized, buoyed by her promise of a new era. Marcus and his 4 allies, Greg, Paul, Richard, and Stephen, were scrambling. Melissa's tablet buzzed with updates from Lena, her hacker, tracking their moves. Marcus had hired a high-priced law firm, claiming wrongful termination and accusing Melissa of orchestrating a personal vendetta. His allies followed suit, their lawsuits a desperate bid to salvage their reputations. But Melissa's evidence was a fortress: video footage, financial records, and whistleblower testimonies, all now with the FBI. David, her lawyer, entered her office, his expression grim but satisfied. "Their cases are flimsy. The feds are digging into their offshore accounts. Millions in fraud. They're done." Melissa nodded, her gaze on the city below. "They'll fight dirty, monitor their communications." Lena's latest report confirmed Marcus was emailing, former clients spinning tales of betrayal, but Athenics' partners, smelling blood, distanced themselves, loyal to the company's new vision. Melissa's reforms were her shield: mandatory anti-racism training, anonymous reporting channels, and a task force to elevate sidelined talent. She'd announced these in a company-wide email, her words raw: "We've failed you. No more." The response was electric. Employees flooded internal forums with support, their stories of Marcus's abuses pouring forth. Her next move was personal. Melissa convened an open forum in the auditorium, the same stage where Marcus had humiliated her. Hundreds attended, their faces a mosaic of hope and skepticism. She stood at the podium, no notes, her presence commanding. "I'm Melissa Carter, your CEO. I've seen Athenics' darkness firsthand. Speak and I'll listen." Hands rose hesitantly, then boldly. A black engineer shared how Marcus blocked her promotion, calling her unfit for leadership. A Latino analyst recounted expense fraud he'd been forced to hide. Melissa listened, her pen moving, each story fuel for her mission. She met their eyes, her voice unwavering. "You're heard. Change starts now." Jamal, the coder who'd recorded Marcus's assault, approached her after. "I want in," he said, his voice steady. "This place needs people who'll fight." Melissa saw herself in his fire, the spark she'd had at 22 before Marcus crushed her startup. "You're leading the diversity task force," she replied. "Build it strong." Jamal's nod was a pact, and Melissa felt a surge of pride. She wasn't just dismantling Marcus's legacy, she was planting seeds for a future he couldn't touch. The backlash came swiftly. Marcus's legal team leaked a smear to a tabloid, painting Melissa as a vengeful opportunist who'd trapped him. Social media churned, bots amplifying the noise. Melissa countered with precision, authorizing a statement confirming her ownership and the FBI's probe. The truth was her weapon, and it cut deep. By evening, Marcus's LinkedIn profile, still listing him as VP, drew scorn. Former colleagues unfollowing en masse. His allies fared no worse. Greg's country club revoked his membership, and Paul's charity board seat vanished. Their world was unraveling, and Melissa was the weaver. She didn't savor their fall, not yet. Her focus was on Athenics' soul. In a late-night strategy session, she and David reviewed HR files, unearthing buried complaints against Marcus's. Click. A pattern emerged. Black and brown employees systematically demoted, women harassed into silence. Melissa's jaw tightened, thinking of the engineer's story, the analyst's fear. "Fast-track reviews for every victim," she ordered. "Promotions, reparations, whatever it takes." David scribbled, his pen a metronome. "This'll cost millions." Melissa's eyes flashed. "It's not cost, it's justice." Lena burst in, her laptop glowing. Marcus just tried calling a client, the Thompson Group, begging for a lifeline. Melissa leaned forward, intrigued. The Thompsons were Athenics' biggest partner, and she'd already briefed them on Marcus's fraud. Lena played an intercepted call. Marcus's voice slurred with desperation, claiming he'd been framed. The client's response was ice. "We're with Ms. Carter. Don't call again." Melissa's lips twitched, a rare smile. Marcus was a king without a court, his power a fading echo. Her phone rang, Marcus, from a blocked number. She declined, but the attempt stung, a reminder of his arrogance. He thought he could sway her even now. She forwarded the call log to David, her voice cold. "Add it to the harassment file." Outside, Atlanta's skyline glittered, a city that had forged her in fire. Melissa touched the Nexus AI card in her pocket, its edges worn but unyielding. Marcus had taken her past, she'd taken his future. The storm wasn't over. Employees rallied, but some whispered doubts, fearing instability. Melissa addressed them in a video message, her face on every Athenic screen. "We're rebuilding together. Speak truth and I'll back you." The forums lit up, gratitude outweighing fear. By midnight, the stock ticked up 3%, clients renewing contracts drawn to her vision. Melissa stood at her window, the city canvas of possibility. Marcus's call lingered, a ghost of his hubris. She didn't answer, but her silence was a blade, cutting deeper than words. In the safe house, Lena showed her the latest. Marcus's assets frozen, his allies' emails, begging for loans. The FBI had raided their homes, seizing laptops. Melissa's evidence was a noose, tightening with each move they made. She leaned back, exhaustion creeping in, but her fire burned steady. Athenics was hers to save, and every step, every Step every policy, every voice uplifted, was a brick in its new foundation. The storm raged, but Melissa was its eye, calm and unstoppable. Her vow a heartbeat. No one would be silenced again. The Athenics Tower gleamed under Atlanta's crisp March 2026 dawn, its glass walls reflecting a city reborn. Melissa Carter stood at her office window, a sentinel in a tailored emerald blazer, her braids cascading freely. At 32, she was no longer the shadow CEO who'd toppled Marcus Vaughn's corrupt reign 3 months ago. She was a beacon, guiding Athenics through its metamorphosis. The fallout from her boardroom coup, exposing Marcus and his clique's racism, fraud, and abuse, had reshaped the company, and now Melissa was forging a legacy from its ashes. Her reforms, bold and unyielding, were breathing life into a once toxic empire, but the work was far from done. The morning news buzzed with Athenics' revival. A Forbes cover story, From Scandal to Salvation, crowned Melissa as a visionary, her face gracing newsstands. She'd granted the interview reluctantly, focusing not on her vengeance but on her vision, a company where talent thrived, unhindered by prejudice. The article praised her anti-racism training, anonymous reporting channels, and promotions for sidelined employees, sparking a flood of client contracts. Athenics' stock, once battered, soared 15%, a testament to her grit. Melissa scanned the article on her tablet, her expression unreadable. Fame was a tool, not a goal. Her true work lay within these walls. Her office, a sleek command center, hummed with purpose. Lena, her hacker, burst in, grinning. Thompson Group just signed. $50 million deal. They're raving about our new AI prototype. Melissa's lips curved, a rare spark of pride. The prototype was led by Aisha, a black engineer Marcus had once demoted. Now, Aisha's team was revolutionizing supply chain tech, echoing the dream Melissa had pitched a decade ago. "Tell Aisha to prep a demo for the board," she said, her voice steady, "and double her team's budget." The day's agenda was relentless. A town hall to hear employee voices, a board meeting to greenlight expansions, and a quiet mission to fund a scholarship for black tech entrepreneurs. Melissa's first stop was the auditorium, its stage no longer a site of her humiliation but a platform for truth. Hundreds of employees filled the seats, their faces a tapestry of hope and healing. She took the podium, her presence a quiet storm. 3 months ago I promised change, she began, her gaze sweeping the crowd. Today I'm here to listen. What do you need? Hands shot up, bolder than before. A Latina coder shared how Jamal's diversity task force had given her the confidence to pitch ideas. An Asian manager admitted fear of retaliation still lingered. Melissa jotted notes, her pen a lifeline. "No one silences you now," she vowed, her voice resonant. "Jamal's team is expanding. Join it, shape it." The applause was thunderous, a chorus of trust she'd earned. As the session ended, Jamal lingered, his eyes bright. "We're making waves, boss. Thank you." Melissa clasped his shoulder, her smile warm. "No, thank you. Keep pushing." Outside, Marcus's shadow loomed, his legal battles a distant storm. Lena's latest update painted a grim picture. Marcus faced trial for fraud and assault, his assets seized, his allies blacklisted from tech. Their lawsuits against Athenics had crumbled, their evidence dwarfed by Melissa's dossier. Social media buzzed with their downfall. Greg begging for loans, Paul shunned by former allies. Marcus, defiant, had posted a rambling LinkedIn screed, claiming victimhood. It backfired, drawing scorn from ex-colleagues who shared their own stories of his cruelty. Melissa didn't linger on their ruin. Her focus was creation, not destruction. Yet the smears persisted. A rogue blog, likely funded by Marcus's dwindling allies, called her a diversity hire turned dictator. Melissa countered with transparency, inviting journalists to tour Athenics' revamped culture. During one visit, she walked a reporter through the open-plan offices where collaboration replaced fear. A black intern mentored by Aisha demoed an app Marcus had once mocked. The reporter's pen flew, her story later hailing Athenics as a model of reform. Melissa's gamble paid off. Public trust surged, silencing the naysayers. Her scholarship launch was quieter, a personal vow fulfilled. In a community center, she announced the Nexus Fund, named for her lost startup, offering $1 million to black tech founders. The crowd, mostly young dreamers, erupted in cheers. A 19-year-old coder clutching a laptop approached her after. "I read about you," she said, eyes wide. "You're why I keep coding." Melissa's throat tightened, the girl's fire, mirroring her own at 22. "Don't stop," she replied, handing her a card. "Apply to the fund, we need you." The moment lingered, a spark of legacy brighter than any boardroom win. Back at Athenics, the board meeting loomed. Melissa entered the glass-walled room, her presence shifting the air. The board, once skeptical, now leaned in as she pitched a global AI hub, led by diverse talent. "We're not just recovering, we're leading," she said, slides flashing. Data, 30% more innovation since Marcus's exit. Employee retention up 40%. The board approved unanimously, a nod to her unerring vision. As they dispersed, a board member lingered, his voice low. "You've changed the game, Ms. Carter, but watch your back. Men like Marcus don't fade quietly." Melissa's eyes hardened. "Let them try." That night in her office, Melissa reviewed HR reports, a ritual of accountability. Over 50 employees, once buried by Marcus's bias, had been promoted or reinstated. Aisha's AI team filed 3 patents, a vindication of talent he'd crushed. But scars remained. Some staff feared speaking out, haunted by the past. Melissa drafted a new policy, mandatory bias audits enforced by Jamal's task force. Her pen paused, her wrist twinging from Marcus's assault months ago. The pain was a reminder, not of weakness but of her triumph. Lena's tablet pinged with news. Marcus's trial date was set, his allies turning on each other to cut deals. Their wives, shamed by association, filed for divorce, citing financial ruin. Melissa felt no pity, only resolve. She'd built a case so ironclad their futures were rubble. Yet her victory wasn't their fall. It was Athenics' rise. Employee forums glowed with ideas, once stifled, now celebrated. A black designer's UI overhaul won a client's praise, and a Latina VP's strategy secured a $20 million deal. Melissa's reforms weren't just policies, they were a revolution. She stood, gazing at Atlanta's twinkling horizon. The city had broken her once, but now it was her crucible, forging a new Athenics. Her phone buzzed. A thank you note from the 19-year-old coder applying to the Nexus Fund. Melissa's smile softened, a rare crack in her armor. She touched the Nexus AI card in her pocket, its edges a map of her journey. Marcus had stolen her past, but she'd claimed the future for herself, for Athenics, for every dreamer he'd tried to crush. As she powered down her monitors, a final email arrived, a board member proposing a statue of her in the lobby. Melissa laughed, replying, "Honor the employees, not me." The tower fell silent, its a heartbeat of change. Outside, Atlanta slept, unaware of the empire rising within. Melissa's fire burned steadily, her vow unbroken. No one would be silenced again. Tomorrow she'd face new battles, but tonight she stood tall, the architect of a world where respect, not fear, reigned. The Athenics Tower stood as a monolith against Atlanta's dusky June 2026 sky, its glass panes catching the last embers of sunset. Melissa Carter, 32, paced her office, a fortress of steel and vision, her tailored blazer a quiet armor. Her braids swayed with each step, her eyes tracing the city that had forged her. 6 months after dismantling Marcus Vaughn's corrupt reign, Melissa had transformed Athenics into a beacon of equity and innovation. But the ghosts of power lingered. As CEO, she now faced the final ripples of Marcus's downfall, a test of her resolve to protect her empire from its past. Marcus's fate was a cautionary tale whispered in corporate corridors. Convicted of fraud, racketeering, and assault, he languished in a low-wage delivery job, his once pristine suits traded for a polyester vest. His clique, Greg, Paul, Richard, Stephen, fared no better. Greg toiled in obscurity. Paul fled to a dead-end role abroad. Stephen shunned, worked odd jobs for relatives, and Richard vanished into irrelevance. Their professional corpses littered the industry, barred by non-competes and infamy. Melissa received Lena's latest surveillance, a grainy photo of a haggard Marcus unloading crates, his eyes hollow. She felt no triumph, only a cold certainty that justice had prevailed. Yet a new shadow stirred. A cadre of Marcus's former subordinates, loyalist holdouts, plotted sabotage. Lena's tablet revealed their scheme, a leak of proprietary AI, code to a rival firm, aiming to tank Athenics' stock and tarnish Melissa's legacy. The attempt was desperate, their digital tracks sloppy. Lena had intercepted their encrypted chats within hours. Melissa's lips pressed thin, her fingers tapping the Nexus AI card in her pocket, a relic of her lost startup. "They're using Marcus's playbook," she said, her voice low, edged with disdain. "Greed and betrayal." Lena grinned, already countering Marcus. "I've locked their accounts. Want to confront them?" Melissa nodded, her gaze sharp. "Set a meeting. Tomorrow." The next morning she strode into a conference room, her presence a storm front. 5 executives, mid-level loyalists, sat rigid, their faces pale as Lena projected their emails on a screen. Plans to avenge Marcus by breaking her empire. Melissa's voice was steel, cutting through their stammered denials. "You thought you could betray Athenics and walk away?" she asked, leaning forward, her eyes pinning each one. "You're not him, but you're close enough." She offered a choice: resign quietly or face prosecution. 3 signed resignations on the spot, their hands shaking. 2 hesitated, only to be escorted out, their access revoked. The room cleared, and Melissa stood alone, her resolve unshaken. She'd rooted out the poison, but the audacity of their scheme stung, a reminder that power's taint lingered long after any one person's fall. The sabotage attempt had rattled employees, whispers of instability snaking through forums. Melissa countered with a company-wide address, live-streamed from the auditorium where Marcus had once humiliated her. She stood tall, no notes, her voice a clarion call. "We've faced betrayal before," she said, her gaze sweeping the crowd. "But Athenics is stronger because of you. Report any threat. No one silences you now." She unveiled a new transparency tool, a blockchain-based whistleblower platform, coded by Jamal's task force. Applause erupted, trust reignited. Later, Jamal caught her in the hall, his grin wide. "They're with you, boss." Melissa's nod was firm, her heart lifted by his fire. Outside, Marcus's allies stirred, their desperation palpable. Lena's intercepts caught Greg meeting a shady consultant, plotting a smear campaign. The consultant, spooked by Athenics' legal muscle, backed out, but the attempt galvanized Melissa. She bolstered security, directing Lena to fortify digital defenses. "No more surprises," she ordered, her voice a blade. David, her lawyer, confirmed the loyalists' resignations had quelled the leak threat, but he warned, "They'll keep trying. Wounded dogs bite." Melissa's eyes glinted, her reply cool. "Let them. We're ready." Her true victory was Athenics' rebirth. Aisha's AI team, once stifled by Marcus, launched a platform that slashed client costs, earning a $30 million contract. Employee morale soared with 0 harassment complaints, a first in company history. Melissa walked the open plan floors, watching coders collaborate, designers pitch boldly, and a culture of fear was replaced by possibility. A black intern, mentored by Aisha, thanked her shyly for the Nexus Fund scholarship that funded her degree. Melissa's smile softened the moment a brick in her legacy. Yet the past clawed back. Marcus's legal team, scraping for relevance, petitioned for a retrial, claiming new evidence. David dismissed it as a stunt, but Melissa wasn't complacent. She authorized Lena to dig deeper, unearthing a deleted email from Marcus to a loyalist urging one last play. It was vague but damning proof he hadn't surrendered. Melissa forwarded it to the FBI, her voice to David icy. End this. The feds tightened their case, Marcus's retrial bid crumbling within days. The day's end brought a quieter mission. Melissa hosted a Nexus Fund workshop mentoring young Black founders. Their pitches, apps for education, health, justice, echoed her dreams at 22. She listened, advised, her presence a lighthouse. A 20-year-old entrepreneur gripped her hand, eyes shining. You're why I didn't quit. Melissa's throat tightened, her reply soft. You're why I keep going. The workshop ended in laughter, a rare moment of lightness in her war. Back in her office, Melissa stood at the window. Atlanta's skyline, a constellation of resilience. Lena's final report confirmed the Loyalists' scheme was dead, their digital footprints erased. Marcus, broken, had vanished from public view, his delivery job his only tether. His allies, equally ruined, were ghosts, their influence null. Melissa's reforms, transparency, equity, innovation, were Athenics' new pulse, a shield against their remnants. She touched the Nexus card, its weight a vow kept. No one would crush her again. Her phone buzzed, a message from Aisha, inviting her to the AI team's launch party. Melissa declined, her focus inward. She powered down her monitors, the towers, fading. The city outside pulsed, a testament to her triumph. Marcus's power was ash, but Melissa's was aflame, building a world where respect outlived fear. Tomorrow she'd face new battles, expansion, skeptics. But tonight, she honored the scars that had shaped her and the strength that had won. The Athenics Tower shimmered against Atlanta's velvet night in September 2026, its spires a testament to a revolution forged in fire. Melissa Carter, 32, stood in her office, a sanctuary of glass and resolve, her tailored blazer shed for a simple silk blouse, her braids loose. 6 months after dismantling Marcus Vaughn's corrupt dynasty, she had sculpted Athenics into a global paragon of equity and innovation. Now, as CEO, Melissa was no longer just a warrior. She was a visionary, her legacy rippling beyond corporate walls. Tonight, on the eve of a landmark tech conference, she reflected on a journey that had reshaped her and the world she touched. A Forbes headline glowed on her tablet. Athenics, the corporate renaissance. The article crowned Melissa as tech's trailblazer, celebrating her transformation of a toxic empire into a model of inclusion. Her reforms, anti-bias audits, whistleblower protections, and diverse leadership had tripled innovation metrics, drawing $200 million in new contracts. Yet acclaim was a double-edged blade. That morning, a tech blog had dredged up her 2015 startup failure, framing Nexus AI's collapse as a flaw in her genius. Melissa faced the jab head-on, keynoting a virtual panel where she owned her past. Failure forged me, she said, her voice resonant through thousands of screens. It taught me to build unbreakable. The chat exploded with support, her candor disarming critics. Her office hummed with quiet purpose. A framed photo on her desk captured her with Aisha's AI team, their smiles a mosaic of triumph. Aisha, once sidelined by Marcus, now led a division filing 5 patents, her work echoing Melissa's lost dream. Jamal's diversity task force had grown into a global model, mentoring 200 employees of color. These were her true trophies, not headlines, but lives uplifted. Melissa's gaze drifted to the city below, Atlanta's lights a constellation of resilience. This city had broken her at 22. Now it was her canvas. A knock broke her reverie. Lena, her hacker, entered, tablet in hand. Conference preps locked. Your keynote's trending already. Melissa nodded, her focus shifting. Tomorrow she'd address 10,000 tech leaders, unveiling Athenics' open-source AI framework, a gift to the industry. But Lena's grin hinted at more. Also, Marcus's mom just emailed, wants to speak at your nonprofit's gala. Melissa raised a brow, intrigued. Marcus's mother, once his defender, had pivoted after his conviction, becoming a vocal advocate against workplace toxicity. Her shift, sparked by Melissa's anonymous funding of her reform talks, was a quiet victory. "Invite her," Melissa said, her voice soft but firm. "Let her amplify the cause." The Nexus Fund, her nonprofit for women of color in tech, was her heart's work. Launched months ago, it has awarded $2 million to 50 founders, their apps tackling education, healthcare, and justice. Melissa had hosted a workshop last week, mentoring a cohort whose fire mirrored her own. A 21-year-old's pitch for a voter access tool had left her speechless, a spark of legacy. She'd pledged $100,000 on the spot, her handshake a vow. The fund wasn't charity, it was a movement, dismantling barriers Marcus's world had built. Yet shadows lingered. A documentary crew filming Glass Ceiling Shattered hounded her for interviews, framing her as a lone hero. Melissa redirected them to Aisha, Jamal, and Maria, a Latina VP whose strategy had clinched a $50 million deal. "They're the Dory," she told the producer, her tone unyielding. Her phone buzzed, a message from the crew, pivoting to profile her mentees. Melissa's lips curved, a rare flicker of satisfaction. Her legacy wasn't hers alone. It was theirs. The conference loomed, but a quieter task called. Melissa reviewed Nexus Fund applications, her pen dancing over a proposal for a health equity app. Her wrist, scarred from Marcus's assault, ached faintly, a reminder of her fight. She paused, touching the Nexus AI card in her pocket, its edges soft from years of resolve. Marcus was a ghost now, his delivery job a footnote, his click scattered. To obscurity, their power was ash, but Melissa's was a flame kindling futures. A final email arrived. The board, proposing a $1 billion AI expansion. Melissa drafted a reply insisting that half the leadership roles go to underrepresented talent. "Equity isn't optional," she wrote, her conviction a pulse. The board meeting next week would seal it, but she knew they'd bend. Her track record was ironclad. Athenics' culture, once a mire of fear, now buzzed with collaboration, its forums alive with ideas. Zero harassment complaints, a first, marked her triumph. She stood, gazing at Atlanta's horizon. A memory surfaced, her 22-year-old self, weeping over Nexus AI's ruin. That girl had vowed justice, and Melissa had delivered not with vengeance, but with creation. Her phone pinged, a thank you from a Nexus Fund grantee now launching her app. Melissa's throat tightened, the weight of impact grounding her. She powered down her monitors, the tower's hum fading. Tomorrow she'd face the world stage, but tonight she honored the quiet victories. Every founder funded, every voice heard. The city slept, its pulse a rhythm of possibility. Melissa slipped the Nexus card back, her reflection in the glass. A portrait of strength. Marcus's fall was history, her rise was eternal. She whispered to the night, a vow renewed. Justice isn't ending them, it's building better. The tower stood silent, a monument to her will. As she left, her heels echoed, a cadence of legacy that would outlive any foe, a flame no darkness could quench. Thank you for joining us on Melissa Carter's riveting journey in Melissa Carter's Revenge, a tale of resilience, justice, and transformation that we hope has left you inspired. What did you think of Melissa's rise from betrayal to triumph? How did her story resonate with you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your reflections and where you're tuning in from. Your insights fuel our storytelling, so share what moved you most. If you're as captivated as we are, hit that subscribe button to catch our next saga of empowerment and redemption. A huge thank you for being part of our community. Your support keeps these stories alive. Until next time, stay bold, stay true, and we'll meet again for another unforgettable tale. Keep shining, and let's continue this journey together.